like the killer whale.
I had already pressed record. So funny enough, you started it. You ready? Do it.
What?
Do the intro.
I don't know what the intro is now.
It's community property. Half the intro is yours.
Nah.
Orca, the killer whale, is one of the most intelligent creatures in the universe. Incredibly, he is the only animal other than man who kills for revenge. This is Slashers, a podcast about movies and more for those who love horror. My name is Jake, and with me for now and forevermore, my love and better half, Sierra. Wife, how are you this evening?
Good.
So when I told you I wanted you to guest on an episode, I bet you had no idea I'd pick a movie from 1977 that 5 people have seen.
No, but I've come to expect that from our movie watching experiences, so this was not a surprise. I actually enjoyed this movie, so it wasn't as, taxing as some of them have been.
I told you, it's classic for me. I could definitely understand why people would have a differing opinion, but I think one of the funniest things in the world was when I was having a conversation with my dad on speakerphone, and I asked him about Orca, and he's like, yeah, and I just saw this look from you where you like knowingly nodded, like, it makes sense that the fisherman who loves schlocky movies would pass this on to his son.
Yeah, pretty much.
So I don't anticipate that anybody has seen this movie, and I really have a feeling that our listenership is going to go down for this episode, but quite frankly, I couldn't care less because I really like this movie.
I feel like it's worth what was it, $3.99?
$3.99 on YouTube.
$3.99 rental.
Yeah.
I would have rented it again.
For sure. We almost had to because you fell asleep the first time.
That was not because of the movie.
Yeah, that's because you're pregnant and you chase a 2-year-old and you were working. And yeah, no, you get a pass. Don't worry.
But I just need everyone else to know that because I actually really did like the movie.
It's fun and it's relatively well done. And the stuff that doesn't work is like laughable and like kind of quaint. So shall we get into it?
Let's do it.
Now, I have some explaining to do to you. Now, I want you to know that if you look at any of my laptop, my phone, my browser history, and you see something called Oedipis Orca from the same year, I did not look that up. But if you look up Orca from 1977, there's a tremendous amount of media and stuff for Oedipis Orca, which is apparently a skin flick, which I was too afraid to click on.
Ooh.
But I just want you to know, I didn't click on it, and it scared me because I didn't know if it involved proto-furries or something, but we're moving on.
It was called Oedipus Orca?
Yeah.
That is amazing.
I don't think that furries existed before Babs Bunny and Space Jam, so I take that back. Now, I was really intrigued by statistics on this one. I did some oceanography statistics or oceanology. Marine zoology. That's what I did. And anyway, what I ended up looking up was to see if there were any orca-related deaths that were recorded in human history. There are no, in human history, recorded wild orca deaths. There has been one instance where a human has reported being bitten, which, I don't know, it happens, I guess. But the only fatalities, there have been 4 in captivity, 3 of which were related to the whale Tilikum, who was in the Blackfish documentary.
Right.
So, I mean, if we really want to compare, the kill count of this movie to Tilikum is almost comparable. So basically what I'm saying is that this movie is based on true life in reverse because Tilikum killed people after the movie came out.
Gotcha.
There you go. I also tried to see if there was any link to the whales in this and the whales in Free Willy. No Free Willy, but
that's what comes up. I mean, every time when I was searching for it, it's like Orca, Free Willy. I'm like, these are very different movies.
Yeah.
One is a child's movie. One is not.
One's a child's movie. One is where a whale's child falls out on a deck and like the saddest thing I've ever seen. Jesus. But it was presented as being based on an author, Arthur Herzog III's 1976 novel of the same name, released on September 3rd. Now, here's the thing I kept finding. No evidence that it was ever in production before this movie. And so what it seems to be is that Dino De Laurentiis, the producer of this film, and something of a schlockmeister, he was basically the Italian guy who was like, hey, that movie worked in America. I can do it Italian and cheaper. So what he would do, it seems that because Jaws was based on a novel, he wanted this movie to be based on a novel. So he commissioned it. And so there are certain discrepancies in it. It's largely believed that Herzog did a novelization based on an early draft of the script before Robert Towne ended up coming in and doing rewrites. Now, Robert Towne, he wrote Chinatown. I think it was Mission Impossibles 1 and 2. A very accomplished writer in his own regard, has some certain interesting history of his own. In fact, in a Washington Post article titled "The Heady Sunrise of Robert Towne," they actually just plainly addressed this movie, and he refused to comment, but it seemed to be well accepted. This is how deep your boy went. That was an article from December 3rd, 1988, when we were a whopping 1 year and 4 months old.
Yep.
But in the book, there are some discrepancies. Captain is really not likable. He refers to women as bitches. With Umalak, he's basically just racist. It's kind of problematic, and he's not anywhere near as endearing. But also, I think it makes the end a little bit easier in terms of the narrative of what happens. Spoiler alert, he dies. Now, Herzog's widow said this is a quote, "The 1977 film Orca is based on Arthur's book Orca. The film and book have different endings. I recall Arthur saying he had the idea first before Jaws, as it sometimes takes years for him to start and then finish a book. Jaws came out in 1975, and as I did not meet Arthur until 1981, I only have memories of his talking about going to actually see the filming. Arthur loved animals and got a kick out of my birds, one of which would sit on his head, cleaning each hair, while Arthur made the sound of a kiss and the bird made the kiss sound back." It delineates, but you could see this rambling answer basically doesn't say shit. She says he said his idea came first.
Right.
I have no evidence of that. In fact, I didn't meet him until 6 years after Jaws came out. And
he loved my bird.
Yeah, 4 years after Orca came out. So she's not a credible witness, and obviously she's a widow at this point. So she's not going to say, "Hey, the man of my dreams who kissed my bird, who kissed both my birds, is dead.
Wow.
I'm going to besmirch his honor and basically call him a fraud and a sycophant." But he did have another movie that some of our friends might know. He wrote a book called The Swarm, and that was a 1974 movie. So kind of interesting. Now, the whales were from Marine Land of the Pacific and Marine World of Africa, which is a Six Flags Discovery Kingdom. And we had kind of played a fun game of like spotting the change between the orca in the tank and ocean generic shot and transposing the orca and everything. But by and large, given the budget, this is pretty fucking impressive what they were able to pull off, right?
Yeah.
Now, I have to concede, when Jaws came out, it had a smaller budget of about $7 million. Granted, it came out a couple years before, but I don't think that hyperinflation really played into effect in that few year span. Shall I get into the stabtistics for this week?
Let's do it.
So shot on a budget of between $6 million and $17.5 million. And I saw you looking at the notes going, before that, a lot of the time goes into the negotiations for distribution rights. Films used to stay in theaters and drive-ins and everything much, much longer when people didn't have Netflix, because basically you were consuming movie media by going to a movie. So sometimes things would stay in theaters for a period of years, or cheap theaters were way more popular back then. Like, for instance, the Star Wars franchises.
That's crazy.
Star Wars, each of them would stay in for years. And so one of the things they would use in negotiating how much you'd get for distribution is the cost of the movie itself. So sometimes you would greatly over-exaggerate the budget of the film to basically try and sell it as, hey, this is a primo picture. Other times, the reverse. So it's a little complicated and a little bit weird, but we know that in any capacity, it was a flop. It grossed about $14.7 million, and the opening weekend, it only grossed $3.5 million from 775 screens before ultimately getting, to where it was at.
So do you think that the budget was somewhere in between that 6 and 17.5, or yeah, okay.
And so if I can, opening weekend, July 22nd, 1977. Here's the competition. This is really bad. The Hills Have Eyes came out on the exact same day, which is the Wes Craven classic.
Right.
On the 17th, you had The Deep come out. The Deep was written by the same dude who did the original Jaws, Peter Benchley, and it starred Robert Shaw, who played Quint in Jaws. So big time, right? That movie opened to $8 million on 800 screens. So really, you're talking about 25 screens difference, and it more than doubled what this movie pulled in.
Well, and that's hard. I mean, I really feel like that's unfair because people had, like, Jaws was an established movie. People loved it. They knew the actors. So, I feel like it was going to be a hard fought battle.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
There's no way around it. That just wasn't a great weekend to open.
Completely. And one of the things you see when you're looking at the old, really negative reviews, almost every single one compares it 1-for-1 to Jaws and says it's derivative and says it's bad and says all these things. And really, I mean, yes, it's derivative, but the fact is it's built a cult following because the farther we get from that 1-to-1 comparison,
Right.
the easier it is to digest. Because the fact is people didn't say, oh, well, the Meg is a ripoff of Jaws.
Mhm.
Or 47 meters down is a ripoff of Jaws because Jaws came out a fucking millennia ago by
Right.
comparison. Now, I will say The Deep did get a Marvel Comics adaptation that I'm kind of excited about finding, but frustratingly, none of their licensed comics are on Marvel Unlimited. So if somebody wants to send me a PDF, /spot@gmail.com. Also, the week before that, The Island of Dr. Moreau came out, which is haunted and one of those cursed movies. So,
I've never seen that one, but
it's a thing. And the remake is a thing too, but I appreciate the story. It's very convenient. You know how I was talking about how many theaters The Deep and this movie opened in? For frame of reference, those movies both over 700 theaters. When Star Wars came out this year, it came out on only 32 screens. Can you believe how quaint that is?
This year?
Of the same year of 77.
Oh, gotcha.
Not 2020.
I was like, that seems wrong. I think that there was 32 theaters in our area that were showing it.
Jesus Christ. And they were all sold out.
And now they're all closed.
Yeah, and everybody was complaining the whole time. Like, oh, the Rise of Skywalker is so bad. I can't wait to see it again so I could find more things to blog about.
I was funny because I was just thinking about how you were saying how movies have been out for, or they'll stay in theaters for a while. And then I was thinking about how we were just complaining about with the pandemic that is happening, how our local, the only theater that is open, which is our drive-in theater, has had the same movies for literally 2 months.
Yeah.
So
and they haven't done anything to like get old film prints. Like I've said a million times, the two things that would make me happiest for that theater to do the drive-in would be one, to do UFCs, and two would be to just get like some janky old grindhouse film.
Think about the old films, fine, not UFC. Wrong.
Yeah.
Wrong city, wrong.
That's a good point.
Demographic.
That's coming from a teetotaler who's never had a drink. I imagine that it would be a debauched mess.
Yes, for sure.
Now this movie, 92 minutes long. Oh, it feels so good. It feels so right. Lately, we've done a few movies that just went a little too long. And Jakey Poo, when we did Silent Hill last month, I fell asleep. Well, I think it was 3 times in 2 nights. I could not handle that movie. And this movie, I wanted to just start it over again by the time it was over.
I was so surprised when you did that. It cracked me up. You're like, okay, I'm going to take a nap. Well, I'm like, babe, just go to bed. No, I just need to finish this movie.
Because I couldn't have that shitty movie in my brain for another day. And what's funny is like, I bet I would blow people's mind by how much I love this crappy movie with a clearly fake whale over so much of other cinema. And that's not just to be a contrarian. This is just like my brand of schlock and shit. Movie was directed by Michael Anderson. He is pretty famous for doing movies The Dam Busters, Around the World in 80 Days, Logan's Run. He did The Sea Wolf, which was made for TV, and an adaptation of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, also made for TV. Now, this is where Michael Anderson gets cool AF. Are you listening? 1977, there were production notes of a movie called Nessie that was supposed to be co-produced by Hammer Films, who we did the whole retrospective on over the summer,
right?
And TOHO, fucking Godzilla TOHO company. It was going to be Loch Ness Monster versus fucking Godzilla. Not really, but it would have involved basically the same kind of setup where, an irradiated Loch Ness Monster is terrorizing the world. And there were posters that went out, and it was referenced in magazines. But there's some frustration there. So in one of the trade magazines, I think it was Variety, they had a promotional poster that said it was going to be directed by an individual named Brian Forbes. And then they also had reference of Andrew Y. McLaren, Lindsay Anderson, and Michael Ritchie. So sure, Michael Anderson's name is in there, but it's also in there with a bunch of other people. And it's kind of this weird, cryptic, everybody's heard legend of it here or there. But one of the things that makes it really cool to me and gives certain credence to like how honed the movie was and the idea was Michael Carreras, who was one of the production heads at Hammer Films, said in the Encyclopedia of Hammer Films that this movie, Nessie, was the biggest disappointment of his entire life that it didn't get made. Wow. Does that like set your imagination off of like,
well,
how
first,
great?
I mean, when you said all those, like the production companies, I had a feeling like it would have been good movie.
Yeah.
Like at least entertaining and visually stimulating.
And honestly,
maybe the backstory wouldn't have been that great, but
right.
Fun to look at.
Exactly. I think that especially at this time, I really wonder if Orca's failure played into it because of the fact you're dealing with an aquatic beast, and especially with Nessie.
And people are like, I would have rather just been making a Loch Ness monster film.
Right. Well, because Nessie isn't as anthropomorphic as like a Godzilla.
Right.
So having that physicality, I think they just like, oh, it's just a sea monster. Jaws is just a sea monster. Blah. I honestly question it. Now, there was a long-standing rumor that the Loch Ness monster prop for Nessie was reused by Tirayoshi Nakano as the dragon for the film Princess from the Moon in 1987. No credence to that at all. Usually Toho is really clear about reusing stuff, adapting it, adding new heads and everything. There's no documentation of it, but it's just a long-standing rumor that I thought was kind of interesting. And
have you seen this movie?
The Princess from the Moon?
Yeah.
I've seen basically every kaiju film I've ever imagined.
Sorry.
I don't want to shoot you down. I don't want to be overly aggressive. Actually, I might be able to even show you a still from it that might show you that you've seen it on our screen while you were half asleep. Do you see the monster?
Yes.
Does it look familiar?
No.
Oh, I've always thought
I've already been asleep.
Yeah, it looks kind of like one of the Skeksis from the Dark Crystal. I've always thought in the shape of its head. So it's like a Skeksi had sexy with Godzilla. But we'll move on. My last note on Michael Anderson: in 2012, he received a Lifetime Achievement Award from the Directors Guild of Canada. So
that's nice,
isn't it? Though it's like none of your movies were good enough to get an award of their own. But hey.
Overall, your body of work.
Yeah. If we just kind of hodgepodge it into this Frankensteinian mess, there was enough to get one award. Now, the writing process is just a joke. I already talked about Robert Towne doing the rewrites, but who wrote the original stuff? Two of the most prolific spaghetti Western writers of all time, Luciano Vincenzoni and Sergio Donati. Now, I love these guys, both because they worked on two movies that I do enjoy quite a bit. Raw Deal with Arnold Schwarzenegger. I get not a spaghetti Western, 1986. But then they did For a Few Dollars More and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Death Rides a Horse for Vincenzoni. And then Donati also did Once Upon a Time in the West. Like, dude. So you go from this dank ball sweat and dirt desert to the Arctic Ocean.
Yeah, but you can kind of see like the similarities between, spaghetti Westerns and this film.
The fucking revenge film?
Yeah.
Yes. It's awesome.
This makes complete sense.
I want that fucking orca to have a poncho. And this is the perfect movie.
And a hat.
Oh, yeah.
He needs a hat.
And that gets us into our next big point, music. Ennio Morricone. Oh my God. The entire Man Without a Name trilogy. Like just that alone, I could just stop and people would have to give respect. But here's a really interesting fact. At age 87, he was the oldest winner of a competitive Academy Award at the time The Hateful Eight came out in 2015. Later got surpassed by James Avery, who won at age 89 in 2018. But the important thing is that for a glistening 3-year period, he was the guy swinging his. Okay, for a glistening 2-year period, I just did math again in my head. But you can see, just magnificent. And if you've never seen the other ones in the Man Without a Name trilogy, everybody always talks about the good, the bad, and the ugly. But you've heard this. When I'm humming to our daughter to put her asleep, I hum basically 4 songs, which is The Misty Mountains from The Hobbit, the original 1977 version, then The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, A Fistful of Dollars, and For a Few Dollars More. Those themes are just perfect. And this movie, not as good, but still I love it. Do you love it?
The sounds, the soundtrack, absolutely. It was great. It definitely led the film. And you know how some films can have like soundtracks that are like overly dramatic. I'm like, okay, calm down.
Yeah.
This is,
This is a little quaint for that. Yeah.
Right. But I felt like this fit really well.
I did too. And it got a kind of an unearthly quality. Like some of the vocalizations remind me a lot of the original Star Trek series with the and it just kind of has this weird ethereal nature. And it takes me back to, we've talked about this a bunch. I used to love the Jacques Cousteau Under the Sea stuff, and I would watch those videos just to death. And I'd look in those books a lot. And I really love that scape. That's why I always love snorkeling. It's just a completely different world. And so the underwater stuff in this, it's a little bit barren, but it just feels.
Well, you have to realize it's the Arctic too, so it's not like tropical.
Right. Under the sea,
right?
Yeah.
So while it is barren and like ethereal, I think that it captures the landscape well.
100%.
Appropriately, at least.
Oh, yeah. Now, did you find that the music was too similar to some of the Westerns that you'd seen? Because the comparison I could imagine being frustrating, being, like I said, dry and arid versus moist and not
You know,
arid.
I don't think that I had made that connection, or I would have made that connection before now. So maybe if we rewatched it, I would have a better answer for you. But no, listening to it, I did not automatically think like, Western.
Right on. And so I was agreeing with you because, like, even though I'm a huge fan of this composer and his scores, even though I could pick out his music over a bunch of others. Like,
yeah.
If you play 310 to Yuma, I'm going to know the difference between that. Like, and so even with that in my mind, it was clearly delineated. So I'm glad we're on the same page. It's almost like we're meant for each other. But Dino De Laurentiis, our fans will probably know him best from The Silence of the Lambs. He produced that. He produced one of your husband's all-time favorite movies of all time. All time? All time. Top 5 all-time any genre, Conan the Barbarian. Boom. Amityville Horror, I think it was the second one. Flash Gordon. Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, which everybody loves, that nobody ever says negative shit about. But one of the things that's really funny, and I don't think a whole lot of people know, is that he did Manhunter before he did Silence of the Lambs, because he'd already bought the rights to Thomas Harris's novel. Now, Manhunter is just Red Dragon, but bad. And it's good. Like, literally, the Tooth Fairy at one point uses a pump action shotgun with one hand, and it's just cocaine, and it's the guy from CSI. We should definitely watch it someday. And by someday, I mean right now. Also, Army of Darkness. I mean, basically, you look at his career and it's just amazing. He did a bunch of Stephen King stuff, Silver Bullet, Firestarter. So if you ever, are looking for a deep dive to do, he's the guy. And then also produced by Luciano Vincenzoni, who wrote the original draft of the script. So basically, Vincenzoni says he gets a call in the middle of the night from Dino De Laurentiis, who's tasked with, quote, find a fish tougher and more terrible than a great white. And so this guy's like, I have no fucking idea I'm not the fish guy.
Right.
And so he goes to his brother, Adriano, who actually is like really into zoology, and was like, bro, let me tell you, killer butt fucking whales. Killer is in the name of the whale. Like, come on. And that's why it's orca instead of giant squid or whatever.
So why do you think that they used orca instead of like killer whale?
So that's funny. This is a huge thing when you look at a lot of Italian cinema at this time. You'll have the same movie released under like 50 titles. It's hilarious to go on IMDb and look at the poster versus the name of the film, because IMDb is really good about having a list of all the different countries that the film was released and what name it was released under at those times. But when it comes to the Italians, sometimes in Italy it would be released multiple times. Sometimes here it would be released multiple times under different names until they kind of just got it right. So one of the names was Orca, the killer whale. Does that make you more or less into it? Because I've always referred to it as Orca the killer whale. And I think that a lot of people just go Orca. Less is more. Prince, share.
I feel like less is more. But I was just curious, like, for the tone that they were going for. Or, like with the competition of Jaws, knowing that had just come out and you were trying to, like, have this creature that was worse than a shark.
Yeah, literally it starts off being worse than a shark.
So I was just curious to why they wouldn't have like killer whale in the title.
Well, because I think Jaws, 4 letters, really impactful.
Right,
Orca,
right,
4
right,
letters,
right.
succinct. And I like that, but I just think that it may be the fact that we've seen movies like Free Willy and whatnot that make us have kind of, and like Shamu and
right.
orcas are very well regarded, at least in our age group. So maybe back then it had a more negative connotation. But
that's true.
Especially, I've never heard a headline of an orca killing a person or anything. So that kind of puts it at already in like, we're best friends forever. Let's make bracelets.
Well, maybe they wanted to be like scientifically correct. I don't know.
Possibly. Cinematography, J. Barry Heron. In the closing credits of the film, I don't know if you caught it, but Vincenzoni specifically wishes to acknowledge the work of J. Barry Heron, also the work of Ted Moore. The scenic shots of this movie, awesome.
Yeah, beautiful.
Really well done. And they got enough footage that they could integrate, I won't say seamlessly, with the footage of the orcas and the tanks.
No.
But I mean, pretty fucking good by comparison. You know, like it's kind of quaint by our standards, but at the time,
Right.
like I still think it's good. Now, shall I get into nicknames?
Let's do it.
Oh, you haven't listened to the show or been on in a while because we do nicknames of nickname where we rhyme nickname with other things that rhyme with nickname, like big name, prick name, dick name. So it's okay. You know, it's fine. It's no big deal.
You could have warned me.
Well, I mean, I thought that maybe you would support me and listen to every episode.
I am sorry. The only time that I have time to listen to anything is in the car, and I'm definitely not listening to this with Aurora in the car.
Yeah. But fucking this and but fucking that and fisty. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, Richard Harris played Captain Nolan. A lot of people are going to know him. King Arthur in Camelot, Marcus Aurelius from Gladiator. Like he was in The Count of Monte Cristo, Patriot Games, Unforgiven. But the one that I had to be like, hey, babe, did you notice him? He was Dumbledore in Harry Potter's 1 and 2 before he died and got passed on. But I mean, this guy is a lot to unravel in this movie because there are moments where he's great and there are moments where he's an abomination to screen acting.
Where in his career is this movie? Like,
so he ended up having a pretty significant career resurgence when he got older. I think that's basically him being typecast as like, you know, the old man. So at this point, I would literally put it pretty fairly in the middle.
Really?
Which is funny because he's middle-aged. I think he was 46 when they filmed this.
Yeah, I was looking for an excuse for the mediocre acting. I mean, like when he's on, it's great. And then I'm like, what in the world?
Yeah, some of it's just, some parts are too big and some parts I'm like, what? And I don't know if that's just like a director being like, hey, be stoic, be strong, like manly man. But
like the man in the sea.
Yeah, this dude is definitely not any of the top 3 characters from Jaws. Like, no.
And that's, you know, maybe part of the problem too.
Yeah, I mean, if you put Robert Shaw in this film, I mean, Jesus Christ, this movie. I don't care what you say. That is like a nearly perfect movie for me. And an interesting aside, Robert Shaw's son does a killer impression of his dad doing the speech that Quint does in Jaws.
That's awesome.
You should check it out if you haven't seen it. It's a quick Google search and you will be very happy you made the choice. So we're going to call him Dumbledore, right?
Sure.
Cool. And here's an interesting one. If I'm not mistaken, I might be wrong, dork means whale's penis. Is that true?
That's what I've always heard. I can't corroborate that. I mean,
Dumbledore.
There you go.
Okay. Anyway, we had Charlotte Rampling as Rachel Bedford. Now, there's a movie of hers we have to talk about. In Max Mon Amour, she plays a woman who has an adulterous affair with a chimpanzee.
Wow.
She be fucking a chimpanzee.
I mean, chimpanzees are apes, right? And they're our closest relatives. So, I mean, you can't be too harsh with her.
Yeah, maybe we could only be like 6% harsh, like the variance of our DNA, right?
Yeah, there you go.
Maybe it's underage. I don't know how old chimpanzees get. But anyway, she said, quote, I generally don't make films to entertain people. That's super weird. I choose the parts that challenge me to break through my barriers. A need to devour, punish, humiliate, or surrender seems to be a primal part of human nature, and it's certainly a big part of sex. To discover what normal means, you have to surf a tide of weirdness.
Oh, she
be fucking with him.
She is into some weird things, for sure. That, oh, I love it. I didn't become an actress to entertain people. I just became an actress to challenge myself.
If my audience doesn't have a puckered butthole the whole time.
And explore my sexuality.
On screen, right?
Hey, maybe that's the way she could get off. I mean, I don't know. Maybe that's how she had to do it.
There are worse fetishes. So I wanted to call her Dr. Chimp Fucker, but I don't know if that's too aggressive.
Oh, I can't do that, but you can.
Okay, let's call her Doc, maybe.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe that's better. We had Will Sampson as Umalak. Everybody's going to know him from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. At that time, he had just been working as a rodeo, like bronco buster and clown, and he got recruited after being 20 years in this industry because he was like, hey, we need a giant
Native American.
You're interested? And he's like, okay. But he later did movies like he was in Poltergeist 2 as Taylor the Medicine Man. So very much typecast.
Yeah.
But little known fact, he's actually a very accomplished artist. And his work was even shown in the Gilcrease Museum and the Philbrook Museum of Art. So maybe we look at that.
It's awesome.
Yep. After you Google Robert Shaw's son and the fucking dragon from the Princess of the Moon, this is your next stop. So, I mean, we could just call him the guy from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. I don't have a clever one for him. Cool.
The artist.
There we go.
Know.
Bo Derek was Annie. Now, at this point, many people credit this film as being her feature film debut. She'd previously been a fashion model. She actually had done the film acting for a movie called Fantasies in 1973. Didn't get released until 1981. A lot of people are going to know her as the MILF from Tommy Boy. But I wanted to tell you about how she and our boy, Captain Coco Beware, the Dumbledore, how their paths crossed later in life. Tarzan, the Ape Man from 1981. She's in it. Richard Harris is in it. He
is nominated for
a Golden Razzie for Worst Actor.
No.
Yes. So we thought this was bad. I could only imagine what Tarzan, the Ape Man is like. Now, going to the rest of the characters, not really a whole lot to talk about. Robert Carradine, who plays Ken, he was in Revenge of the Nerds, so if he looks familiar, that's why. The other part I'd like to mention, Yaka and Nepo were the orcas that were used in the film. Nepo lived until 1980, so not terribly long after this, but then Yaka lived 20 more years after this movie came out, so cool.
That is awesome.
Now,
no animals were harmed in the making of this movie.
Yeah, right? Heavy stuff. Whoa, hey. Like when the shark gets it, you're like, yeah, fuck you, shark.
Because you know it's fake.
Well, and not only just that, but like you're like, yeah, you have victimized the human race and I will take vengeance upon you. And this, it's like innocent whale being innocent. Dude, it is such a Western movie where it's like the bandolero who's the widower. So shall we just get into the new modified sleigh by play where we basically just talk about the high points?
Yeah.
Cool. So the movie starts out, blah, blah, blah. There's a guy diving and there's a shark and the dude's scared of the shark. And then killer whale's like, gadoosh! Awesome, right? If you're trying to be like, hey, Jaws isn't shit compared to Orca, your opening scene being your orca killing a great white is kind of dope.
Absolutely. And then Dumbledore, he's just like, what animal could do this?
Right.
What? Like he'd never seen a killer whale before or an orca.
At that point, yeah.
Right.
And I love how like he knows, so like he has these weird like wily presuppositions, but then doesn't know, but is able to become an expert and then isn't an expert and then becomes an expert because of a book.
Right.
But the shark that was used in that scene was actually caught by famous shark wrangler Rob Taylor. Just thought I'd give some aplomb to that individual. But you're right. Basically, he starts talking to the professor who does a voiceover and, you know, at a lecture, basically giving you all like the used car salesman speech about why orcas are tits.
Right.
Did you
Which was really informational.
Yeah, right. I was like, oh, the more oh, look at that's a whale fetus. So when I see a whale fetus in 5 minutes, I'll know exactly what it is. I'll know that the whale isn't pooping to death.
Right.
But,
or it was in intestines or something weird.
Exactly. So the walls of her classroom were blurred out, and you and I were both like, I wonder what class this actually was. Like if it was a trigonometry class, they just repurposed for this one scene, but whatever. So originally they were hunting the shark and they're like, oh, we can get so much money for the shark meat. And then they decide, oh, well, we could hunt a whale and we can get money for the whale. So he takes like the overnight course with Dr. Chimpfucker and thinks he's totally capable to go out and do this.
Right. Even though she warns him, like, you are not going to be able to catch this animal without killing multiple, you know, in the process.
And the way that she, like the kind of doom and gloom she has, you could tell he's like, okay, Toots, you're way overreacting. But it's like, she's the goddamn soothsayer of the movie. She's like, everything is avoidable if you listen to the woman. So, I mean, I don't know what the moral of the story is because I would never listen to a woman ever. I don't know what that's all about. So he goes off on the quest to find his whale and he uses his tranquilizer on the harpoon. And I love there's a scene where he and Bo Derek are talking about how much tranquilizer do you put in the harpoon?
Right.
And he's like, I don't know, it's twice as big as a shark, so I guess fucking do that. No science, no expertise. It was just a really concise job of showing that like he's completely ill-equipped. Right. He might think he knows, but this is braggadocio and balderdash. So he uses that same harpoon. And I really think this is a very effective bit of storytelling. And it kind of goes to like the Western, like the guy who gets a scar on his face, like kind of a Jonah Hex type thing. He shoots the harpoon. It clips the dorsal fin of the killer whale.
The male.
Exactly. I think we just want to call him the bull. They referred to him that a couple of times. I liked it.
Sure.
It clips him so his dorsal fin has a chip out of it and then stabs his wife in the fucking dome. And it's like a terrible injury. They reel her in. They hang her from a hoist.
No, wait. Before they do that, she tries to kill herself by running herself into the prop of their boat.
It's gnarly.
While crying.
Yeah, the plumes of blood coming out and the sound is awful. And he's like, oh, that sound, like it sounds almost human. And you're like, yeah, you fuckhead, it's fucking, it's a mammal.
Right.
This is what the lady who's having sex with that chimp over there off stage, she was warning you about. So they hoist up the female who's just torrential blood.
Yeah.
And it's really effective too, because you can't really see the blood on the black, but where it's on the white, I mean, it's just basically a black and red whale.
Yeah.
Who just has a miscarriage on the deck. And it's just like, fucking kidding me. And then you see the fin and you see the eye. And it's just like, you totally get exactly what's going on. And it's clearly all fake. It's like it's little puppets and stuff. But I think it's really effective. It sets a very good, morally complex dynamic where you have a guy who just made a fuck up, but it's a terrible fuck up. And it's one of those things of like, you can't reconcile that, right?
Absolutely. I really liked how they transposed images on the whale's eye. Like the male or the bull looking at his partner.
Yeah.
And then also capturing obviously the captain or captain, right? Yeah. And having an imprint basically of this person now like seared into his brain and was like, oh, this is not going to be good.
Yeah, his brain that's already established as being very complex.
Right.
And if I'm not mistaken, a couple scenes later, they talk about how Herman Melville once said that if God comes to Earth, he's coming in the form of a whale. So it's like, that tells you the kind of, and they address the fact that the intelligence isn't a 1-for-1. It might be smarter in other ways. We don't know. And I love quoting you when you watch movies. This is you. That looks really fake, but sad. So then the captain's on land and we were both too frustrated to not pause the movie and talk about this. How Captain Dumbledore has his beanie on sideways, his toque where he has a tuft of hair and one ear sticking out.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it was really bad. I was so distracted. I'm not even going to talk about the scene.
I was like, is he trying to look cool? Is this what they think fishermen look like? I'm so confused.
Is he like drunk and he put it on wrong?
Right.
And so this is where the chimp lady is like, hey, you shouldn't have done that thing. And he's like, come on. Like the thing happened because, this whole scene happens after a fucking funeral march starring orcas where the bull pushes its mate to the shore. And I was like, it's just fake fins on water, but I feel something here. And so literally staring at the corpse, he's like bargaining. I was like, oh, well, there must have been a really crazy tide last night. And she's like, you're an idiot. He pushed her corpse onto land to send you a message, you idiot. Again, this moral of the story is lost on me about women being right. I don't know. That's my new character I'm working on. The guy who doesn't appreciate women. So one other thing that you might appreciate in the film, I don't know if you remember this from watching Jaws, but that boat is called the Orca.
Yep.
So just thought I'd point that out. From this scene, you get the orca.
And wait. Can we say what the name of this boat was?
Bumble.
Oh, too much.
Kind of reminds me of Bizarro compared to Superman, where it's like, I'm good-natured but bad.
It was too much.
So
sorry.
No, please. It's
the people needed to know.
Yes, people deserve answers. Damn it. So then the orca goes to the cove, harbor, whatever you want, and sinks 3 boats. And people are like, "What? Like, bro, you got to get the fuck out of here." And he's like, "I already paid my rent for a month, motherfucker. Rent ain't cheap." And he's also like, my boat's fucked up from all this shit, so you got to fix it. And the union guy is like, I'm going to fix it immediately.
You're getting to the top of the list, sir.
I've never heard somebody threaten somebody with good customer service like that. It's like, I'll fix your boat. And the guy's like, okay, then. Then he has another stare down with the whale, and you have this like weird overlay of a car accident. At this point, you still don't know, right? You're like, oh, why is he seeing a car when he sees a whale?
So weird.
How do you foreshadow something that happened years ago? But whatever. I guess you foreshadow a reveal, but whatever. So Umalak is then introduced, and he says something I thought was actually kind of beautiful. I quoted it. I'm not going to get this as a tattoo. Don't worry. Times have changed. Even our gods dance to a new song. That's remarkably deep for a movie that's this dumb.
Well, he was kind of just saying like, yeah, you're screwed.
Yeah. Basically.
Like, my people would have done this to ward off this orca, but you fucked.
Yeah, he's like, we would have pissed on a stuffed animal filled with pig carcasses or some weird thing, and that would have warded it off. But he's basically like,
great, so you can do that for me. He's like, nah.
Nah, this whale's got GPS in its brain, dog. It's going to find you. It's a heat-seeking sperm whale. So Dumbledore sets up a scarecrow on this
dock
landing. And he has this look of smug satisfaction. Like, yeah, this stupid whale it's not gonna get me, dog. And then the stupid whale's like, you want to see how stupid I am? Suck D's nuts. And then blows up everything.
That was crazy. So it basically ruptured a pipe that caused a huge explosion to, what was it?
I think it was like an oil or gas explosion.
Yeah, I
that
think
went
it
to
was.
Like an oil refinery of some sort on
so
the hill.
basically, now the entire town is screwed.
Yeah, and so did you like how they transposed the same whale jump 3 times using chroma key onto the same ocean?
Yeah.
Adorable.
And they did that in the beginning of the movie.
It was the same whale
I know.
horizontally jumping at itself.
On its axis.
Oh, God.
Yep.
The symmetry was kind of lovely. But yeah, basically, if they were mad that there were a couple boats broken, this is like the world has ended. And they did a decent enough job of just making it look like the whale was just kind of thrashing, and it wasn't like deliberate, like, oh, those are pipes. I know exactly what's going to happen, and I'm going to hit this lantern.
Did you feel like
that? I've gone back and forth. In watching it as a kid, I thought like that was a too smart whale. And then in watching it this time, I was like, he's just crashing into shit.
Okay.
You thought it was too smart?
Yeah. I thought that, I mean, I don't know if he knew specifically that it was like the pipeline, but he clearly purposely like broke the pipes.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but I don't like the way he just rattled the desk and made a lantern fall off. I don't know that he can necessarily see I don't know. Maybe I'm just trying to like pull back the dumbness a little bit, but yeah, it's a problem. And so then the doctor who hates him, but then also kind of oddly loves him, ends up in the tent with him. And this is where you get like, oh, he's the asshole captain with a heart of gold because he's got an excuse. And what's his excuse?
His wife and unborn child were also killed by a drunk driver, not a diver.
That's very different. It's a scuba guy from the beginning who was like hiding from the shark.
Sorry.
And so the plot twist is the shark was the good guy who was trying to get revenge.
Drunk driver. So like she was on the way to the hospital by herself and someone hit her and killed her, both of them. So it has deeply affected him, obviously, as it would anyone. So he can kind of now relate to this whale or orca that he pretty much did the same thing to. Yeah. So, I mean,
I almost wish that this is one of those things where it almost gets it right. Like, it's an interesting storyline, a little convenient, obviously, for the narrative. But the thing that makes it interesting is his quest for revenge. Did he ever feel that thirst to murder the drunk driver? Or was he able to logically reconcile, this is somebody who made a mistake? And that's the one thing I think that he wished he touched on, where he like gets it.
Right. Yeah.
It's tough, right?
It is hard to say, because I like that there is that delineation of like, okay, this is the difference between man and beast. One can rationalize, maybe the other can't. Maybe they just see red. Maybe they just see like, I have to have revenge. Whereas humans, we can kind of emotionally go through the process of forgiving and, But I would say you're right.
Yeah, I want him to be savage.
Right.
That's the more compelling story, is that he has to accept and atone and go like, look, I'd want the revenge.
Right.
And that's what compels him to go. Because at this point, he doesn't agree to go out in the ocean because it's very accepted. Everybody's like, he didn't break your boat because that orca wants you on that ocean.
Right.
And he's like, nah, I'm not doing it.
Right.
So I wish that this is the point that made him get there. But he goes for another reason. Why is that? It involves his sister who already had a bum leg, that's the funniest part to me, is it's like, I didn't fuck up your leg enough, so I'm coming back for more.
Taking a bite at ya.
Yeah. He bites off Bo Derek's leg after breaking their house and creating a slip and slide into his mouth. Did you like it?
I did.
It's a hokey miniature, but I really love it.
And I love that you see him like swimming off with a prosthetic leg, clearly prosthetic leg,
Yeah.
but it was good.
I love that they're like throwing the net to her and she can't climb. No, God forbid she do that with her upper body. That's fine. No, they have to pull her.
Drag me.
She's this like frail, beautiful woman. And oh man, it's a good one. So after
maybe she was on painkillers.
Okay, maybe. I'll give you that.
I'm just trying. I don't know.
So one of the things that I think was really funny is, did you catch that the whale's supersonic screech broke her wine glass?
Yes.
So silly, but adorable. And then the team just goes off to get revenge because that's what you do. And there's a little voiceover and they almost do a depth charge. And Dr. Chimpanzee Intercourser is like, no, smack. I thought that was...
and throws it onto their own boat.
God. Like, you're supposed to be the smart one, you idiot. But the best part of this whole movie, I take back if I said something else was better earlier, was when the whale decides to go the rock and does the just bring it with his tail. Like, oh, come on, you honky bitch. Let's go toe to toe with the great one, even though I don't have toes because I'm a whale. So they're going. He picks off the nerd who's on a sail. Did you like that death? Where he's just like, ah!
I did. I was like, oh, this is what this movie needed. Just silliness.
And then when he picks off Paul, who's just surrounded by ice, that one's cute. And then basically they beach on the iceberg, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And Umalak gets crushed by the ice. All it's missing is a really good sound effect. I've talked about on the show many a time that the made-for-TV version of The Shining is like the best thing ever because the one dude dies with a croquet mallet being like, meh! And so if Umalak did the same thing, like I'd be so about it. But it's just kind of sad. And you're like, oh, well,
aww.
What frustrates me about him is he's such a byproduct, you know?
Right.
Like he isn't a direct line of violence. It's like he didn't have to die for multiple reasons. And so how does the movie end?
So Doc and Dumbledore are on the ice. He slips and falls down a, hill. I don't know what you call it, iceberg. And the whale pushes him on a chunk of ice into the, out in the middle of the ocean, not in the ocean, but I don't know what.
What I really want is for Mr. Narwhal to come out and be like, bye, buddy. Hope you find your dad.
Pretty much.
Because he's like literally on a little
chunk of ice.
Yeah, like a float tube of ice.
Right.
It's so funny.
And it's not in the middle of the ocean, but it's like he's in the middle of the iceberg, the ice patch, I guess. So he can't like jump to another piece of ice. He's kind of stuck.
And did you find it inconsistent? So when they're pursuing the whale, he's like, that whale's going to get stuck under all that ice because he's dumb and he won't be able to come up and breathe. Meanwhile, this same dude is like gadding huge holes in the ice with his shotgun. I'm like, the whale can breathe there now.
I mean,
there's a lot of logical gaps at this point in the movie, so I can see what you mean.
Next, I guess, just more so, he is on the ice. Doc throws him his gun, which it kind of looked like it hit him in the face.
Yes.
And I was like, yes. I don't know.
Take that, nerd.
I kind of felt like I put myself in that situation. I was like, Jake would have been screwed because I am a terrible throw.
Yeah.
And
the whale would have shot me with the gun you threw to it.
It would have gone in the water for sure. So I'm like, well, I mean, if it hit him in the face, at least he has the gun. Anyway. So, the whale comes up and like makes this weird noise. I don't know. It's like he's taunting him, I guess.
Kind of, yeah.
And Dumbledore has the gun, pointing at the whale, doesn't shoot him though. And the doc is like, get him! Like, just do it already.
Yeah, right?
And the
one
whale,
who's like there to advocate for the whale.
Right.
The public defender who's like, this whale is a good guy, really.
So the whale comes up, slams his body onto the ice and creates another slip and slide. So basically, it's a Titanic situation. He is holding on to the top of the ice, and the whale's just waiting him out. Be like, you're going to slip?
Yeah. And he's like, I'll never let go, Jeff.
So down he comes into the water. The orca is circling him.
Yeah. What do you think about the way he kills the guy? I remember seeing this for the first time and being like, oh, he's not dead. Oh, he's dead?
Right.
Yeah.
Do you want to explain?
Sure. He uses his tail like a trebuchet
Right.
and flings this motherfucker into an iceberg
right.
and crushes his head. And he's like bloody and then just like rolls into the water. And I remember being a kid and thinking like, oh, well, now the whale is going to kill him. Clearly that wasn't
like biting him or something, right?
Something more vicious. And I think that there's a certain eeriness to the fact that he just lets him die and like lets him like slowly drown. Like, it's dark.
Okay, but did you, when he was first in the water, when he slipped in, I was like, okay, first of all, hypothermia has got to be taking a toll here.
Oh, you think he's going to be frozen in the ice like Captain America?
No.
Oh, sorry. What were you saying?
No, I'm just saying, like, I thought that was going to play into it somehow, or, I don't know.
That he was going to live?
No, that like he was just going to let him drown, basically, like just because he kept on circling. I'm like, okay, what? Come on, like it would have been cheesy if it would just like he would have slipped right into his mouth and then he would have died. Like, I get that they're trying to build a little bit of suspense for the whole movie. It's coming to this point, but he was like circling him for so long. I was like, okay, is he just waiting for him to freeze to death?
Yeah.
Like, is he just waiting for him to like give up, basically, and just be like, I'm sorry, I'm just gonna kill myself?
Yeah.
So while the tail tossing was a bit cheesy, I was just like, okay, at least he did something.
Yeah.
I
agree. I think that what I would like best is if when he goes under the ice and is assumed to have killed himself, him being the whale, that he would have dragged the guy with him, showing that the whole eye for an eye makes the whole world blind. Like, this path of revenge was going to kill us both, and that was always the path. And it's like, I'm willing to drown myself to drown you. I think it's a little bit more poetic.
Right.
And especially...
Or like pulled him under with him, right?
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
And because as I'm watching it this time, and I know in the current form, like, I'm almost into it, right? I think that it's like a B-, and it could have been better. If you're going to keep this ending with the whole like him sinking by himself and not being touched, I would really like the hello darkness, my old friend. That would make it fun. But I watched you watch the ending because basically that's what you do with this movie at this point. And then watching your reaction to the suicide is I feel like everybody's reaction of like, wait, but why? What? Is he killing himself?
Yeah.
And you tried to like bargain, right?
I was very confused. I was like, okay, so I felt like he was just swimming off. Like, it didn't, like, it showed.
Like, fuck this place, I'm out.
Well, no, like, okay, I've finished my work. I'm going back to my pod or whatever.
Yeah.
But I kind of had to like question you, where I was just like, okay, I see that they're showing ice. Like, there's no holes in the ice. Like, he's not getting through. I was like, but how long can whales hold their breath? Like, I don't know if... I did not assume that that's what he was doing.
Yeah.
It definitely makes it like a more poetic ending.
Yeah.
Having
right?
him, just be like, nothing is worth living now. I've had my revenge and I'm still without my mate and my child. So I am done myself.
And it's kind of interesting, especially if you're trying to basically, if your thesis is this animal's better than Jaws, the only animal that can kill this animal is itself.
Right.
There's something kind of cool there.
I like that.
And like, it's not as though this is his only recourse. This isn't Shane where he's already mortally wounded and he just goes off.
Yeah.
He is fucking fine.
Yeah.
Basically, he has a chunk out of his dorsal fin and that's it.
Right.
And he's just like, you know what? Like you said, I have nothing left to live for. My purpose is fulfilled. I'm Woody in Toy Story 4 trying to just figure out what the fuck to do. And unlike that movie, he kills himself.
Mm-hmm.
That movie would be way different if it was just Forky looking at Woody with his drawstring tied around his neck and a noose.
Wow, babe.
I don't like that ending at all. We're going to move on. So the movie, in a nutshell, is this a classic, a tragic, or a tragic, in your opinion? I knew you'd have a tough time with this.
I would say a trashic. It's like, I don't know. It's not, I think if the acting would have been better,
Yeah.
it would be a classic in my eyes.
That's what holds it back the most, in my opinion.
Yeah. Because, I mean, in all, I really liked this movie. I enjoyed it. I actually maybe enjoyed it more than Jaws.
At the very least, because you hadn't seen it and it was new, right?
Right. And there wasn't just like such a buildup about it,
Yeah.
you know, because I didn't see Jaws until I was much older. And so, I don't know. I didn't feel like it had been done over and over and over. So it was something new, or a new animal, I guess, that I hadn't seen portrayed like this. So like I said, I really enjoyed it. I would rent it again for $3.99. I would suggest doing that. If you are listening to the episode and you're like, I have never seen this movie, nor do I care to see this movie.
And I think it's worth it to splurge on the HD versus the regular. Like I'm usually not that guy, but like the scenic shots and stuff are really pretty and it's very fun. And I like that element of it too.
Yeah. If you're watching it on a big enough screen, I would say go for it.
Yeah. And to your earlier point, like if you start off with a premise that's so similar, right? It's a murderous water dwelling creature. Yeah. Obviously it's a derivative, but this movie like makes these great leaps and hurdles to try and do different stuff.
Right.
Whether it's effective or not, there's a certain subject to debate. I think if I'm going to put this as a classic, it's a low classic. If it's a trashic, it's a really high trashic. Because like I said, where it fails, it's fun to fail. It's got a quaintness to it. It's kind of cute and you're rooting for the movie almost, right? And so I don't know. I'm going to put this in the classic camp, but I completely understand putting it in trashic. I could even understand how some people think it's a tragic. I mean, if you're really like hell bent and devoted to Jaws or movies like it, of course this is going to be frustrating. But the people who want to say that this movie just bastardizes Jaws, I'm like, okay, then what's Deep Blue Sea? That's
or
just
any shark movie from after that.
Right? I just think that people, if you like it, you'll like it. And if you don't, you don't. And that's the great part about just having opinions is like, I don't have to convince you that this movie is good. And I really enjoy finding things that people like. That's one of the fun things. That's, I think it's pretty well accepted. Brian will tell you that I have seen way more horror movies than he has. So when I pitch movies, he's like, I don't know, what's that? And that's a great joy for me to be able to kind of try and play that game of chess of like knowing, okay, well, if I show you this, I get this, this, and this to talk about on the show. And you see, I watch you more than I watch the movie. And I love it. I think it's so exciting. And that's like the great part. Like I showed our kid The Hobbit from 1977. I spent the entire movie watching her react. And it was like the greatest thrill to me. And so you are a great movie watching mate. And I thank you for enjoying this movie. I'm very relieved that you liked it because it would have wounded me somewhere if you didn't like it because I like this movie so much.
I actually like, this is a movie that I actually enjoyed that you showed me.
Yeah. It's a rarity, but sometimes I pull it off.
Yep. Way to go, babe.
Awesome. So we want to thank you for joining us for the first installment of Beecher Creature Month. Wait, did I say it wrong? Beecher Feature? That's what it was. Beecher Creature Feature? Oh, that's the new name. I just said right now. For the Beecher Creature Feature, which is basically us taking aquatic, specifically, I guess, sea monsters, and just doing movies on it because it's summer, dude. Like, let's put on board shorts. Boing, boing, boing. Do you have anything you want to say before we let these goons go?
Slash you later.
So for both of us, I'm happy to say my name is Jake, reminding you to go out there and do something you love. And remember that all work and no power play makes Jack a dull boy. You're going to have to do the mouth fart because Brian's not here.